In a science class somewhere along the way, you've probably studied atoms. Atoms are these small units of matter that make up everything we see around us. So they're both super important and super tiny. But they never get noticed. Like, you don't walk around and go, oh, look at that pile of atoms over there. No, you just see the things that are made up of the atoms. Like atoms, your life is made up of a lot of things that you probably never see or notice, like your habits. And you don't always notice when a habit is happening, but you probably have habits. Habits like checking your phone as soon as you wake up, throwing your stuff in the same spot when you get home, back at your house after school or after work, sitting in the same seat that you usually do when you're at lunch in the cafeteria, or humming when you're thinking. We all have habits. And you probably have routines that you fall into every day, whether you mean to or not. And some of these habits, they're helpful, some are harmful, and a lot of them are neutral. Sometimes we don't even realize we have a habit until it causes a problem for us. Instead of stressing so much about our bad habits, what we're going to do over the next couple of weeks is focus more on developing good habits. How do we use our time and our resources well by adding helpful habits to our lives? There's a story in Matthew chapter 17, verses 1 through 8, where Jesus takes some of his closest followers, Peter and then two brothers, James and John, up to a high mountain to be alone. And while they were all hanging out up there, Jesus was transformed. We call this sometimes the transfiguration. And the text tells us in Matthew 17 that his face started to shine like the sun and his clothes became bright white. And all of a sudden, there are these two really important historical figures from the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, who show up with Jesus. They're Moses and Elijah, and they're talking. And Peter, one of Jesus' closest followers, is really excited. And he said, Lord, it's wonderful for us to be here. If you want, I will make 3 tents, 3 shelters for you as memorials, one for Moses, one for Elijah, and one for you. And see, I think Peter probably meant well, but what he didn't realize is that Moses and Elijah are awesome. They were really important, and it's really cool that they're like appearing thousands of years after their death. But Jesus was the reason why they were there. So God shows up and speaks to them in this moment. And this is what God says about Jesus. This is my dearly loved son who brings me great joy. Listen to him. And we're told that the disciples were afraid. They were overwhelmed by this. They fell with their face to the ground. And Jesus comes over and touches them and says, get up. Don't be afraid. And they look, and Moses and Elijah are gone. See, during Jesus' life, many religious leaders had expectations of who Jesus was supposed to be. Some even believed that he wasn't anything at all, that he was a fraud. Some believed that he was Moses or Elijah, or someone like Moses and Elijah. Peter, one of Jesus' closest followers, when he sees this amazing thing, he kind of misunderstands and begins to compare Jesus to Moses and Elijah. But Jesus was so much more than that. And we may have our own assumptions about who Jesus is, questions, misunderstandings about who he is. Maybe you think Jesus was a good teacher, but nothing more. Or maybe you think that Jesus is just a crutch that people lean on when life gets tough. Or maybe you think that Jesus won't love you or accept you until you get through your life. Maybe you think that Jesus is a good option, but not the only way to God. And until we make a habit of really spending time with Jesus ourselves, all these ideas we have about Jesus are going to be filtered through our own personal experiences outside of our relationship with Jesus, outside of our time with Jesus. And we'll probably have an idea of who Jesus is, but we'll probably also have a lot of misunderstandings about who Jesus is. And so our hope is that by developing habits that bring us into relationship with Jesus, we can more clearly see and understand and experience for ourselves who Jesus is. The Apostle Paul wrote to a group of Christians in a city called Corinth a couple of letters. And in the second letter he wrote to them, chapter 3, verse 18, it says this: the Lord, who is Spirit, makes us more and more like him as we are changed into his glorious image. Therefore, since God in his mercy has given us a new way, we never give up. We reject all the shameful deeds and underhanded methods. We don't try to trick anyone or distort the word of God. We tell the truth before God, and all who are honest know this. See, what Paul is saying there is that the more we spend time with God, the more God's Spirit will transform us and we'll begin to look, think, feel, and act the way that Jesus did. We'll be more like Jesus. When we spend time with God, we become more like Jesus. We are transformed to reflect more of God's nature, God's character, and we build habits that shape who we are. So let's make it a habit to spend time with God.